understand the desired outcomes, create communication strategies that support those outcomes, and then wrap that all in a continuous learning and experimentation framework. That's how you create success.
Outcomes that are real, but also the ones they care about.
That's the fun part for me, is actually seeing it work. We're lucky at Data Axle. We've got a lot of great brands who say, we love the work you do, the outcomes you drive, and we love how you do the work.
Andy Frawley, CEO of Data Axle. From the early days of rudimentary customer data to the hyper-personalized world that we now inhabit, our guest has not just witnessed the evolution, he's driven it.
If you don't innovate, you're going to die. Companies have to be willing to cannibalize their own products, because if they don't, somebody else is going to do it. Somebody's going to build a better mousetrap. So if you want to keep your clients, it's got to be you.
You have so many dang customers. You're such a big company. What are you doing to sort of beat that drum to where the customers don't feel like they're just another number?
We serve Fortune 100 brands, and obviously what we do is
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Lead the Team. Today, we're diving deep with a titan who shaped the very landscape of data-driven marketing for over 3 decades. From the early days of rudimentary customer data to the hyper-personalized world that we now inhabit, our guest has not just witnessed the evolution, he's driven it. He's led startups and billion-dollar enterprises, and his insights are distilled in his book, Igniting Customer Connections. And today, we're talking with, yes, Andy Frawley, CEO of Data Axle, a true powerhouse of information with a staggering database of over 90 million businesses and 300 million consumers, leveraging AI and real-time intelligence to help companies find their best customers faster than ever. Andy, welcome to Lead the Team.
It's great to be here, Ben.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun today. We were just talking a little Celtics basketball.
Yeah.
And now we're going to dive into in this other world, but maybe we'll bring it back to the Celtics, a little Larry Bird maybe along the way. So what's a surprising way that data drives meaningful connections between companies and people?
So it's a little bit back to the future, honestly, Ben, in that if you look back to the classic days of advertising in the 60s, it wasn't data driven, but it was all about creating an emotional connection between a brand and a consumer. And what's really interesting now, we can do that at scale, at an individual level, digitally, by the power of data, and more impactfully over the last few years, real AI to sort of, how can I connect with you emotionally? You know, is it over the Boston Celtics? Great. Is it over golf? Even better. And so that's really what sort of propelled Data Axle forward, having all this foundational data, but being able to use our analytics to really understand at an individual consumer level or business, how do we make that emotional connection?
Yeah. So how do you think about emotions in data? Because they don't seem like they really go well together. Like I think about the old Mad Men TV series,
Right.
where they're like sitting in the conference room and they're just batting it around. And now maybe you're having those conversations in the boardroom, but now you've got data, but still, where does it go to the emotional side of the
Well,
equation?
it's using AI to sort of predict what is going to be an emotional trigger for Ben. You know, is it going to be, a geography? Is it going to be a color? Is it going to be an affiliation with a sports team? So if you think about somebody who's trying to computers to knowing that I'm also an avid golfer, and then advertising me through connective TV while I'm watching the Masters, pretty good way to get my attention.
So you're trying to make all these linkages
Right.
to really affinity groups.
Absolutely. And the other thing we do is we understand the full person, not just my consumer profile, but also my professional profile. So Andy Frawley, who's in Naples, Florida, is the same Andy Frawley that runs Data Axle. And so we can see professional needs, personal needs, wants, interests, and, and do very, very content heavy communications that drive that emotional connection. It works, which is what it's all about.
And at scale, like you said, it's individualized at scale versus going, hey, we're all scale, or we're so individualized that we're just spending so much money, or like the Super Bowl, which is just mass scale.
Right.
Now you're able to boil the darn thing down. So maybe what's an example of in the future, like this is not necessarily possible today, but what's something that could be down the road in terms of where you reach people and how you reach people?
Well, so the channels we reach people continue to evolve. I'm a big fan of CTV right now, connected TV, because it will
Okay.
deliver sort of short form video content. But if you think about all the things Gen AI can do for us, so the historical limitation is I can know a lot about you, but it's very expensive to create content for you. Now
Mm.
with Gen AI, we can start to let the machine do some of that work. I don't think it's ever going to do it by itself perfectly, but it can take a lot of the sort of labor and expense out of customized content for an individual person.
Yeah, great distinction there. It's not just, okay, now we have the data. Wow, that's nice. We really know who our people are, but how do we make the content that most resonates? And those are two different worlds in terms of tools, understanding data, teams you got to build, who you got to partner with.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such an interesting world that we're going into here. Now, you're known for one of your quotes is building customer relationships that fuel sustainable business growth. Can you tell us about a time where that led to a breakthrough or a period of sustained success for your company?
Sure. Some similar philosophies how we approach our customers or our relationships as well. Unlike a lot of tech companies that like to talk about all the things that we do and how smart we are, all our bright, shiny objects of driving outcomes. You know, marketers, they want outcomes. They want more customers, more profitable customers, customers that stay longer, buy more. They don't need to understand exactly how all of it's done. If they want to, we're obviously happy to share that with them. We're fully sort of transparent in all of our analytics. What we find is if we can understand the desired outcomes, create communication strategies that support those outcomes, and then wrap that all in a continuous learning and experimentation framework, that's how you create success. And as long as we're driving outcomes, clients are going to stay with us. If we stop, they should probably fire us.
Yeah, so it's outcomes that are real, but also the ones they care about. If you go in
Right.
and you show, hey, look, your impressions are going up. Well, wow, right?
Who
But
cares?
yeah, what does that lead to? Something yeah, the number that they truly care about makes all the difference to be able to ask the questions up front. And it's so funny. I can really see. I'm curious. Like, have you ever been on a sales call or you meeting with a client and you see somebody sort of going in and like presenting the information, and you're like, wait a minute, we don't really know what they care about here. Maybe we're just data dumping and then making a twist in the moment to understand and then shift the communication.
It happens all the time, and it's unfortunately something that is kind of driven in sales and client services people in tech companies from early on. They're built to be very proud of what they have from a
Yeah.
capability standpoint. But again, if it can't drive a business outcome, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're working with an online travel company right now, and they provide great experiential travel. They have a great experience, when they talk to on the phone. So they just needed to get people to call the phones. And they knew more than two-thirds of them would convert, and they know the ones that convert take 4 or 5 trips with them over their lifetime. And so very we get the phones to ring, it's going to work. And I think we need to go further down the funnel. So, that's the fun part for me is actually seeing it work. We're lucky at Data Axle. We've got a lot of great brands. They'll both say, we love the work you do, the outcomes you drive, and we love how you do the work. Because we don't try to force people into our framework of getting work done. We try to work within their framework.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's almost like you guys have the curse of knowledge. Like you have so much information and you can maybe even anticipate what their needs are going to be. But if you let your mind sort of shut off on that front and you're going one direction, you might miss the thing is, hey, what they really want, they just want the phones to ring, gang. We
Yeah.
don't need to be focused on these other things. And this goes back to another thing that comes up is this thing about inspiring customer loyalty, which in the data world, I mean, there's a lot of different data companies, a lot they're being bombarded by a lot of different groups. What is your key strategy or key focus or thought that helps you guys retain your customers for the long haul?
Well, it is as simple as driving those outcomes. Obviously we have to do good work. We have to, the data's got to be high quality. Systems have to stay up. But those are table stakes. Like not everybody can do that, but that needs to be sort of the baseline. And then the question is, can I drive outcomes? Can I come with you every day, week, month, quarter with a bunch of new experiments to run that aren't all going to work. When the ones do work, we'll sort of fail fast on the bad ones and go hard on the new ones. And we work with clients we're doing the marketing strategy for. We also work for clients where we're the data guys, but we still try to build that into all of our engagement models.
Is there an example where you guys came in and the company was maybe frustrated with like an incumbent and you're able to bring this drive outcomes philosophy and right the ship for them?
Well, the one that comes to mind is the online travel company. So they were working with one of our competitors, and to your point, they were driving a lot of clicks, but
Mhm.
they couldn't connect those clicks to bookings or
Where are they
home.
coming from? Are they people that even travel?
Right. Yeah. And it's a demographic. It's a very specific demographic for older, mostly retired people because the trip's 2 or 3 weeks long. That combined with being fully transparent, our marketing funnel will show you opens and clicks, but we're going to drive it all the way through, in this case, to phone calls. There's still a lot of companies who don't provide that level of transparency from a media, particularly from a media standpoint.
All right, let's talk about driving results in the Celtics. Which
Okay.
players or which teams or coaches do you think really had that right along the way? Obviously, there's this, it's a storied franchise, but there's some outcome driven.
Yeah, well, I like, I've been fortunate to been a fan of the Celtics way too long, I guess. But I thought the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett era Celtics, it's an interesting case because they had all-stars on the team and they brought Kevin Garnett in and he had the energy and the focus and the sort of will to win, and it worked the first year, which yeah, you wouldn't have thought blending all those superstars together could. So sometimes it's a matter of finding that special ingredient raises everybody else up. And again, that's the same in business, right? I mean, it's all about the people. And if you get the right people in the right seats, you give them goals and metrics to work towards and everybody holds themselves accountable, you're going to have success.
Yeah, so good. And a good reminder for leaders to think about that when they're building their teams out in their organizations, to think about what the overall outcome and who's going to be able to check their egos at the door and play a
Right.
different role. Garnett obviously had to put the team on his back when he was at the Timberwolves and playing a lot of that is a different situation when he came into the Celtics.
Yeah, no, and
And
you had Paul Pierce there, who, was an all-star, great player, but Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, who was the other all-star, had to be
yeah.
prepared to take a back seat to each other to some degree. And I was a guy who had some computer science background, graduated as a business major, and sort of got thrown into helping implement travel companies' loyalty programs.
Okay. All right.
Long
Interesting
time
to bring
ago.
up your other client too.
So
World Travel. I think some travel
I'll,
sponsors on here.
yeah, I'll date myself by saying the first client I ever worked on was Pan Am Airways,
Oh yeah, which is in Mad Men, which is one of the
which is a
big
Mad
clients
Men.
that reappears over and
Yeah.
over again. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a great TV show about it. It's like 10 years old. It's really, really well done. But I got to do my basic training there, had the opportunity to work for a couple of really good, leaders, bosses who took the time to actually teach me foundational skills, both from a sort of technical perspective, but also from a business perspective. And I was able to translate that into my first real leadership job, which was I founded a company in the mid 90s called Exchange Applications, which was the first Martech product, commercial Martech product ever built. We were able to scale that business and take the company under and sort of
When you said what was the word you
Martech, marketing
Oh,
technology.
marketing tech. Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
technology would let business understand customer data, do segmentation,
So what
launch marketing
so did
campaign.
that click for you working with Pan Am? Like, hey, we need to be thinking about not just what we know, but what our client needs and shifting the conversation? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a time when data and data management capabilities were exploding, so you could do a lot more. You could access a lot more data, and that was, like the first generation of what today would call a modern data warehouse or data lake. And so, the logic that got me there was interesting tools you could use to do segmentation and
Mhm.
do analysis, but they were mostly for programmers or at least highly technical people. And so we built a platform that let a non-programmer sort of do a lot of that work. We're very
Awesome.
fortunate to sort of launch it at the
So,
perfect
so
time.
the user group exploded with that because you didn't have to have
Right,
a programming background to be able to do that. And at that time, for people who remember, like the IT group, you like kind of kept in the back of the business.
right.
They definitely didn't have a seat at the boardroom table,
No,
and they weren't as connected, like they are now.
yeah. Well, and if you think about a traditional IT person, particularly from that era, and a chief marketing officer, they don't really talk the same language very
Yeah,
well.
different.
And
Yeah.
so part of that company, both the software and the people building in those translation layers. So we could go from a desired campaign and something that I actually executed in the marketplace.
Man, what a interesting twist. Because you had your computer background. And for people to think about this, when you're and people listening, like in their careers, maybe they're early on in their careers, pursuing your interest area in computer science. But then when you got into the Pan Am world, you're like, wait a minute, there's a marketing opportunity here. So we don't always know where a career is going to lead.
Oh,
I'm wondering for you if you were just open to that possibility, or did you kind of have I think it's easy for people to say, hey, I've got to be computer programmer. I was trained. That's what I came out to do. And you kind of made a left turn and then combined some stuff together to make it happen.
yeah, I'd love to say it was a brilliant plan, but there was no plan.
Maybe it was just being open to the possibility
Yeah,
and not having tunnel vision.
I think it was being open, having intellectual curiosity, which I think is a really important thing. It's one of the pieces of advice I give to people early in their careers. Um, again, I had this innate ability to sort of link technology and business outcomes and marketing strategies that nobody taught me that. I just kind of figured it out.
Yeah, figured it out, worked through it. This intellectual curiosity, I often ask the question, what's the one trait you'd instill in every employee and why is it important? Like, is that the one intellectual curiosity that
Yeah, so
you
intellectual
first have?
curiosity, wrapped in an experimentation framework.
Okay.
So you know what's working, what's not working. Being just may not be the best business skill. You got to be able to translate it to
We gotta
again.
we gotta harness that energy a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, and then some combination of work ethic, sort of grit, the ability to sort of work through hard problems. You're going to have them in your career.
Mm.
Everybody does, and they might be just a how do I fix a problem for a client, something bigger. So those are that, and for people get some basic training. And so if it's technology, get a good foundation. Don't worry about having the best paying job or whatever it is. Early, you get that foundation that you could build off of.
Yeah, so good. So is there a time or when's the time in your career in the business where you're like, man, I had to dial in the grit, like we had the curiosity, but we really had to double down on grit to persevere and get through the thing.
Also, I mean, lots of times when you're involved in big software development, you have to do that.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah. One sort of foundational thing for me was we were involved in a very large data breach, and I'd never experienced something like that. Anybody knew about it unless you were in the sort of marketing industry, marketing ecosystem. And we were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Ouch. You're like, I really hope the first time I was going to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, it was going to be for a major accolade,
Right.
not a data breach.
So it was an interesting experience. I learned a ton of 2 weeks, and we were able to sort of contain it and mitigate it as much as we could. And then my CTO and I went and visited every customer that was impacted face to face, and we only lost one customer.
Wow.
So yeah,
Congratulations.
they weren't all fun conversations, but by having a track record of delivering outcomes prior to the breach, and then very effective, very transparent communication, like during the actual period where stuff was going on, and then taking the time to go out visit with everybody, talk about what we were doing in the future, and how hopefully this would not happen
Wow.
again. They were understandably, clients were very upset about it. They were hard conversations.
So you dropped everything,
Yep.
went on the road, visit everybody in person. I assumed you didn't have any problem getting a meeting.
Oh no, we met with people
Right.
we never
Yeah.
met before.
Get in here, stat.
Yeah.
And if you can think back to that time, could you walk us through like how you approach that? How do you approach those meetings in a way? Because there's probably high emotions, a lot of pressure. How did you prep? How did you go through those to have such successful outcomes?
Yeah, they were virtually all were difficult meetings. Again, our approach is we said we're going to show up and we're going to tell you everything we know, and we don't know everything, which
Mhm.
typically, and that's relatively early on in an event, and we walk them through the facts, answer their questions as transparently as we possibly could. I was lucky to have a CTO who was a very client-facing CTO, so he communicated pretty complicated or technical events very well in a way that the marketing people could understand it, but also we were talking to the IT people and the security people and legal and compliance people as well. So, I just think people really appreciate transparency.
They appreciate transparency. And for the listeners who are sitting there listening right now on the cheap seats, like us, data breach has never happened to us. Y'all, there's going to be an equivalent problem.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
not
not
an
a
if, it's a when in the world we live in.
world we live in. And would you, yeah, I'm thinking like I'm asking this sort of hypothetically to the listeners now, but you think about your key suppliers. If they had a big problem on your account or your data, would they show up on your front doorstep, being transparent, keeping you updated? I mean, those are the kinds of relationships that can save a career, that can save a company.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm wondering, like, what's your advice for leaders to foster this? Because you guys could have sort of taken the broom and tried to sweep it up and be quiet. Hey, we're going to keep you updated, but don't forward all this out. We don't want your company to get all upset with us. And you guys were just out there immediately on this thing. What's your advice to leaders who are questioning their supplier relationships right now? They're like, I don't know if we'd had that kind of relationship. That type
Yeah, if you don't have that kind of relationship, there's probably stuff going on you don't know about outside
of
of
already.
them. So you should question it again. And the other thing is we could have junior people out to have all these conversations. We decided that, that we'd do the communication right from the top.
Makes a difference.
Yep.
Makes a difference. Over the years, what's been your biggest source of inspiration? And what's been a challenging time that's gotten you through?
Um, I continue to obviously been doing this a long time. I continue to be inspired teams creating those outcomes for clients and creativity and innovation that goes into just continually producing those outcomes. That's why I still do what I do. I sort of have a love for that work.
It's that satisfaction of seeing the
Yeah.
job done and seeing the numbers moving in a meaningful way.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's when you really think about it, sometimes it's just easy to get bogged down in the work for work itself. And I think we as leaders, it's our job to remind people of what's important, the client, the customer, what they care about, and keep aligned to that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All the money comes from the customers. So
Well,
you got to focus on that.
you have so many dang customers. I mean, you're such a
Yeah.
big company, get a lot of employees. What are you doing to sort of beat that drum to where one, the customers don't feel like they're just another number? And what do you do for the employees so they don't feel like that either and they stay engaged in the game?
Yeah, it's a great question. So and DataX is unusual in that we serve world-class SaaS platform that lets people, understand data and activate against it. But even there, if they need help, we have people who can help them, all the way through our largest enterprise clients where we may have 10 or 20 doing strategy work and analytics work, custom AI work.
Hmm.
And again, we continue to refine it. And my whole leadership team is out with clients all the time, including me. So we like to have our finger on the pulse of what's really going on. In terms of the associates, we have a great team that sort of is continually working on associate communication strategies. We do all the standard things in terms of town hall meetings and content. We're trying to keep the edges on from a channel. What's the right way to get the right information? Joe, who's building an AI model for customer ABC. I think it's something particularly, and the other thing about that's I guess not unique about Data Axle, but our reality is we're 100% virtual. We don't have any offices anymore. So we have to work extra hard at it as well
Yeah.
because it's really easy for people to get disconnected and become kind of tunnel vision on a project they're working on at a point in time. So,
Yeah, they can sit there and work on their project, their code, whatever, all day long and not interact with a single other person. And so, but yet you've got to respond to a customer, you've got culture, you've got all these other things. That's that's
yeah,
complicated leadership.
it is. Now, I was fortunate when I joined Data Axle. The company has an amazing culture around servicing clients. Like client sat data is off the charts strong. So that, yeah, that sort of DNA that's been in the company for, I think, its whole 50 years of history. We just need to make sure we unleash it, in this completely virtual world.
Well, Andy, this has been a fun one today. We've covered the
Great.
Celtics. We've covered Mad Men, Pennant,
Yeah.
challenges, giant challenges. So I'll turn this over to you. What are some success strategies that you'd recommend to any employee or something that they need to understand here?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes a little bit back to what I said earlier. Build your foundational skills, have a high degree of competence in some area. It could be technology, it could be sales, it could be analytics. That's really important. People
Mm.
can only fake it so long if you don't really have the chops to the foundation ability to do good work. And that's the intellectual
Mm.
think outside the box. Just because we've done a 50-year-old company like Data Axle, we have a lot of processes that have been done maybe not for 50 years the same way, but for 25 or 30. And one of my jobs as CEO is to say, all right, well, I know we've always done it that way, but why? And is there a better way to do it? In the last 5 years, we've doing cloud computing and that we build stuff off of have just exploded. And so I think it's continuing to sort of get the organization to think at the edges of how can we do something differently. I have monthly innovation meetings with all of our
Mm.
technology teams. It's not just bring me a report that says you 9 out of 10 projects. I want to know what we're doing from an innovation standpoint. Are we thinking about something different? And again, I've got the blend of technology and sort of marketing expertise that I can still kind of contribute myself in that area, which is also fun for me.
Yeah, so many good tips and strategies and stories in this today. And I think it's good to note, y'all, it's a 50-year-old technology company.
Yep.
There aren't that many around. I mean, really, like
Yeah.
figuratively. And and I want to hear your idea on why that is. Like, why do you think it's so hard to exist for very long as a technology company?
Well, if you don't innovate, you're going to die, and companies have to be willing to cannibalize their own products because if they
Mm.
don't, somebody else is going to do it. That's a famous quote from the guy who founded digital equipment. That's not original by me, but if
Yeah.
somebody's going to build a better mousetrap, so if you want to keep your clients, it's got to be you.
So to me, like what I hear in that, it goes back to your intellectual curiosity. And
Yep.
when you start to hone on something, like what are we willing to do? Like if we really believe this idea, are we willing to cannibalize our own project? We need to
Right.
make these big changes. And I think it sounds like a lot of new technology companies have one great idea. They go after it, they're successful, but then the invariant idea behind technology is it's going to change. There's going to be something new. And so,
Yeah. And there's a lot of particularly software companies that they're a product. They're not a company. Like they do a really good job at solving a problem, but
mhm.
the problem's not broad enough for them to scale, and they get bought by another technology company. So the Oracles of the world have been very acquisitive over the years and have this, enormous footprint, which is great. Particularly a lot of founder-led software companies have trouble realizing that.
Well, Andy, it has been a fun one today. Y'all check out the crew over at Data Axle. And if you see Andy at a Celtics, give him a high five or on the golf course. Thanks for coming on
Yeah,
today, Andy.
great. Thanks,
All
Ben.
right.
This is fun.